The wreckage tumbled through the void like broken glass catching starlight. Daniel Reed pulled himself along the safety line, magnetic boots clicking against twisted metal. This far out in the asteroid belt, salvage meant credits and credits meant another month of rent on the station. He had been doing this for 3 years now, picking through the bones of destroyed ships while trying not to think about what happened to their crews. Something moved in the shadow of a collapsed hull section. Daniel froze. His suit sensors showed no life signs, but he trusted his eyes more than he trusted technology. The movement came again, slower this time, deliberate. He pushed forward carefully, hand hovering near the emergency beacon on his chest. Station protocol was clear about unknown contacts. Report first, investigate never. He investigated anyway. Behind a wall of debris, wedged into a corner that had somehow stayed pressurized, lay a creature that should not exist. Its body stretched nearly 3 meters long, covered in scales that looked like fractured crystal. Each scale caught the light from Daniel's helmet and threw it back in colors he did not have names for. Wings folded against its sides, torn and leaking fluid that glowed faintly blue. The head was reptilian but elegant, with eyes that tracked his movement with desperate intelligence. A dragon. Daniel had seen pictures in the station's entertainment files, old Earth mythology that someone had uploaded for homesick workers. But this was real, and it was dying. The creature's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. One foreleg moved, scraping weakly against the deck. A small device near its head crackled with static, then produced words in broken standard. Water, food, scraps, anything. Daniel should have called it in. Unknown alien species, possibly dangerous, definitely against regulations. His supervisor would ask questions he could not answer. Corporate security would quarantine the whole section. They would take the creature away, and Daniel would never know what happened to it. "What do you need?" he asked instead. The translator stuttered. "Waste, refined, waste, minutes only, then peace." It took Daniel a moment to understand. The creature was not asking for food. It was asking for garbage, for the toxic byproducts that the station's refineries dumped into space every shift. It wanted to die with something in its stomach, even if that something was poison to every other species Daniel knew. "You can eat processing waste." The dragon's eye focused on him. "Dravari, we consume, we process, we survive on what others cannot." Past tense, Daniel noticed. We survive, not anymore. He made a decision that would change everything. Getting the creature back to his quarters took 4 hours, and every favor he had saved up over the years. The cargo hauler he borrowed would show up on the logs, but Daniel had learned long ago how to make paperwork disappear into the station's bureaucratic chaos. His quarters were small, barely large enough for his bunk and personal storage, but they had a bathroom with a door that locked. He laid the dragon in his shower stall, the only space large enough to hold it. Up close, the damage was worse than he thought. Cracks ran through the crystalline scales like shattered glass. The glowing fluid leaked from a dozen wounds. One wing hung at an angle that made Daniel's stomach turn. "Sura," the dragon whispered through the translator. "My name before I." "You're not dying," Daniel said. He did not know if that was true, but he said it anyway. "I'm getting you what you need." The refinery waste containers sat in a dump section 3 levels down. Nobody guarded garbage. Daniel filled 2 containers with thick, gray sludge that would burn through human skin in seconds. The warning labels covered every surface in 4 languages. He carried them back through maintenance corridors, avoiding checkpoints and cameras through routes he had memorized during 3 years of very careful rule-breaking. Sura's eyes opened when he returned. Daniel poured the waste into a maintenance basin and watched as the dragon lowered its head to drink. The sludge should have killed it. Instead, the scales near Sura's mouth began to glow brighter. The cracks stopped spreading. The breathing grew steadier. "More," Sura said. "Please, if you can." Daniel made 6 trips that night. Each time, Sura consumed the toxic waste like it was water, and each time the glow spread further across the damaged scales. By the time Daniel's shift alarm sounded, the dragon was no longer dying. It was still badly hurt, but the immediate crisis had passed. "Why?" Sura asked, voice stronger now through the translator. "I am nothing. I asked for scraps to die with dignity. You give life instead. Why?" Daniel sat on the bathroom floor, exhausted. "I don't know. Maybe because you asked for scraps. Maybe because that's all you thought you deserved. I am Dravari. We are hunted, killed, erased. The Vorlath Empire names us vermin. Most species agree. We are the ones who eat poison and live in waste places." "You're in my shower," Daniel said, "and I'm not letting anyone take you." Sura's translator made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been crying. "Then you are fool, Daniel Reed, foolish and kind. These things will destroy you." "Maybe," Daniel agreed, "but not today." Outside his quarters, the station continued its normal operations. Ships came and went. Refineries processed ore into metals and metals into credits. Workers like Daniel kept the machinery running while corporate supervisors counted profits and ignored everything that did not increase the numbers in their reports. None of them knew that something had changed, that a human had chosen compassion over protocol, and a dragon had chosen to accept help instead of death. Small choices, made in a bathroom aboard a forgotten mining station. Small choices that would shake the galaxy. 3 days passed in careful secrecy. Daniel worked his normal shifts in the salvage bay, sorting through debris and pretending nothing had changed. Every few hours, he slipped away to his quarters with containers of refinery waste hidden in equipment bags. The other workers barely noticed. People kept to themselves on Station 7, asking no questions because they wanted none asked in return. Sura grew stronger with each feeding. The cracks in the crystalline scales began to seal, though they left silver lines like scars across the dragon's body. The wings straightened, and the glow from within the scales brightened from dim blue to something closer to starlight. On the third morning, Daniel returned from his shift to find Sura sitting upright, head tilted to examine the cramped quarters. "This is your home," Sura said. The translator no longer stuttered. "It is very small." "It's enough," Daniel said. He set down 2 containers of waste and watched Sura consume them. The process still disturbed him, watching the dragon drink poison like water, but he was getting used to it. "Why do you live in such small space? Are you criminal, outcast?" Daniel sat on his bunk. "Neither, just poor. Everyone out here is poor except the people who own the station. We work, they profit, and we get just enough to keep working." Sura's eyes tracked him with alien intelligence. "Your species accepts this arrangement. Some fight it, most just survive it." Daniel pulled off his work boots. "What about your species? You said you were hunted." The dragon was quiet for a long moment. When Sura spoke again, the translator carried something that might have been sorrow. "The Dravari were many once. We lived on worlds others found too hostile, ate what others called poison. We were useful for this. The Vorleth Empire came to our systems offering partnership. They wanted us to process toxic materials for their industries. We agreed. We thought it was cooperation." "It wasn't," Daniel said quietly. "No, they built facilities on our worlds, brought their waste, their poisons, everything too dangerous for their own people. We processed it all. For decades this continued. Then they realized we were too efficient, too valuable. They decided ownership was better than partnership." Daniel felt his jaw tighten. "They tried to enslave you." "They tried. We refused. So they declared us hostile and brought their warships. They destroyed our worlds one by one, hunting survivors across the sector. They said we were dangerous, that we hoarded valuable processing capabilities. Other species believed them or chose to ignore the truth. Profitable trade with the Vorlath was more important than extinct Dravari." "How many of you are left?" Sura's head lowered. "I do not know, perhaps hundreds, perhaps less. We scatter, we hide. I was on a refugee ship when Vorleth hunters found us. I escaped in a damaged pod. It drifted for weeks before you found me. I asked for scraps because I did not believe rescue was possible. Only mercy. Daniel stood and moved to the small window that looked out over the asteroid field. Lights from other ships blinked in the distance, each one focused on profit and survival. The station trades with the Vorlath. I've seen their ships dock here. Corporate doesn't care what they've done, only what they buy. This is the way of the galaxy, Sura said. Power decides truth. The Vorleth are powerful, the Dravari are not. The mathematics is simple. The mathematics is wrong. Daniel turned back to face the dragon. You're here now, you're safe. That's what matters. For how long? Sura's translator carried urgency now. Each day you risk yourself. If they discover me, they will take you as well. Conspiracy, harboring refugees, violation of trade agreements. Your life will end in prisons or worse. Then they won't discover you. Daniel Reed. The dragon said his full name with strange formality. I am grateful beyond words. You gave me life when I asked only for death with dignity, but I will not let you destroy yourself for me. Tell your authorities I am here. Claim you were studying me before reporting. They may show leniency. Daniel laughed, a harsh sound in the small room. You don't know humans very well. We don't do leniency for rule breaking. We do examples and punishments. Then why do this? Why risk everything for one dying Dravari? Because you asked for scraps. Daniel sat back on his bunk, suddenly exhausted. You asked for garbage and expected nothing else, like you'd forgotten you were worth more than trash. It reminded me of something. Of what? Of me? The words came quietly. 5 years ago I was on a colony ship heading to a new world. My wife and daughter were with me. There was an accident, reactor failure. The ship had escaped pods for half the passengers. I got my family into one, but there wasn't room for me. I told them I'd find another pod. I lied. There were no others. I just wanted them to go without arguing. Sura listened in silence. They made it to safety. I made it to a maintenance section with emergency air. Rescue ships came 3 days later, found me in a storage closet still breathing somehow. My family thought I was dead. When they learned I survived, my wife asked me why I lied to them, why I chose to die. I didn't have an answer. We didn't make it another year together. She took our daughter to the colony. I came out here to the emptiest place I could find. You blame yourself for surviving, Sura said. Every day, I should have gone in that pod, should have fought for a space. Instead, I gave up, expecting nothing but death, just like you did when you asked for scraps. The dragon's scales flickered with soft light. So you saved me because you could not save yourself. Maybe, or maybe I save you because I can, because someone should. Daniel met the dragon's eyes. Because asking for scraps when you deserve life is something I understand too well. Sura moved closer, careful in the small space. Then we are both fools, Daniel Reed, both too damaged to value ourselves but willing to protect each other. Probably, Daniel agreed, but fools together is better than wise and alone. Outside, alarms began to sound. The alarm meant proximity warnings. Something large had entered the asteroid belt, moving fast. Daniel pulled up the station feed on his wall panel and felt his blood go cold. The ship on the screen was massive, angular, covered in weapons that made Station 7 look like a toy. Vorlath Hunter-Killer. Military designation, purpose-built for tracking refugees across deep space. They found me, Sura whispered. Somehow they tracked my pod's signature. Daniel watched the Vorlath ship broadcast a standard hail to the station. The words scrolled across his screen in cold, efficient language. They were searching for Dravari refugees. They had permission from galactic commerce treaties to inspect vessels and stations. They requested full cooperation from Station 7's command. How long until they search quarters? Sura asked. Hours, maybe less if they push hard. Daniel started pulling emergency supplies from his storage locker. We need to move you. Where this station has nowhere to hide, they will scan every section. A knock came at the door before Daniel could answer. He gestured for Sura to stay silent and cracked the door open. Amira stood outside, her dark eyes worried. She worked environmental systems on the station, kept the air flowing and the water clean. Daniel had helped her fix a broken processor once. They were not friends exactly, but not strangers either. "Don't bother lying," Amira said quietly. "I've been watching your resource usage for 3 days. You've been pulling refinery waste like you're running a secondary processor, except you're not. You're feeding something." Daniel's hand moved toward the door release, ready to shut her out. "Also," Amira continued, "I saw you carrying sealed containers through maintenance corridors at odd hours, and your quarters are showing heat signatures inconsistent with one human occupant." She paused. "Whatever you're hiding, the Vorleth are going to find it in about 4 hours when they start their search grid. So you can either trust me or watch your secret die along with whatever you've been protecting." Daniel made a choice. He opened the door. Amira stepped inside and stopped when she saw Sura. To her credit, she did not scream or run. She stared at the dragon for a long moment, then looked at Daniel. "You're hiding a Dravari refugee on a station that does trade with the Vorlath Empire. That's not just against regulations, that's suicidal." "I know," Daniel said. "Good." Amira pulled out a datapad. "My partner works in the docking bay. He owes me favors. There's a maintenance shuttle scheduled for remote repairs on one of the mining platforms. If we can get your friend aboard before the Vorlath search begins, we can get off the station." Daniel blinked. "You want to help?" "I want to not be complicit." Amira's voice carried an edge. 3 years ago, my brother was working on Station 12 when Vorlath inspectors came looking for refugees. Command handed over 4 families trying to escape some war I'd never heard of. The Vorlath took them all. My brother tried to stop it, filed official complaints, went to the media. Corporate fired him for disrupting trade relations. He died 6 months later, still trying to get someone to care. "I am sorry," Sura said quietly. Amira looked at the dragon. "Don't be sorry, be alive. That's the best way to make their cruelty meaningless." She turned back to Daniel. "The shuttle leaves in 3 hours. Can you get your friend to Bay 7 without being seen?" "Maybe, but what about you? If they trace this back to you?" "They won't. I'm good at my job, and my job is making things disappear into system noise." Amira moved to the door. 3 hours, Base 7. Don't be late because that shuttle is leaving whether you're on it or not. She left before Daniel could thank her. "Your species is strange," Sura said. "She risks herself for someone she has never met, for a cause that does not benefit her." "Some humans are like that," Daniel said. "Most aren't, but the ones who are make it worth believing in people." The next 3 hours moved too fast and too slow at once. Daniel packed what little he owned into a single bag. Most of it was worthless, but there were pictures of his daughter, a letter from his wife before the divorce, a few things that mattered only to him. Sura watched him work with eyes that seemed too old for any creature. "You are leaving your life for me," the dragon said. "I'm leaving a job, there's a difference." Daniel sealed the bag. "Besides, I've been meaning to quit for years. This is just good motivation." They moved through the maintenance corridors using routes Daniel had memorized. The station was built like a maze, designed by engineers who prioritized function over navigation. Most workers learned a few paths and stuck to them. Daniel had learned all of them, every service tunnel and access shaft, every shortcut that let him avoid supervisors and checkpoints. They were 2 corridors from Bay 7 when the station's communication system crackled to life. The voice that followed was not human. It spoke in standard, but the accent carried the sharp, clipped precision of Vorlath military. "Attention Station 7 personnel. We have detected Dravari biological signatures in Residential Section 4. All workers in that area will report to Central Processing for verification. Any individual found harboring refugees will be subject to galactic trade law enforcement. Cooperation ensures continued profitable relations. Resistance ensures consequences. Residential Section 4. Daniel Section. They know, Sura said. They suspect. Daniel kept moving. There's a difference. Come on, Bay 7 is just ahead. The bay was empty when they arrived, except for one small shuttle and a man in mechanic coveralls standing beside it. He waved them over urgently. Amira sent you. Get in quickly. The Vorleth are starting lockdown procedures. Daniel helped Sura into the shuttle's cargo section. The dragon barely fit, even with wings folded tight. The mechanic sealed the door and moved to the pilot station. Where are we going? Daniel asked. Away, that's all that matters right now. Away from here, away from them. The mechanic started the launch sequence. My name is Rashid, by the way, Amira's partner. She told me you were worth the risk. I'm not sure I am. She is, Rashid said, gesturing to Sura. Anyone the Vorleth want dead that badly is probably worth keeping alive. The shuttle lifted from the deck just as the bay doors began to close for lockdown. Rashid punched the engines, shooting them through the narrowing gap with centimeters to spare. Behind them, Station 7 disappeared into the asteroid field, and ahead lay only empty space and uncertain hope. The shuttle had been running silent for 6 hours when the proximity alarm screamed. Rashid killed the alert and pulled up the sensor display. 3 Vorleth interceptors were closing fast, their engine signatures burning bright against the black. They tracked us, Daniel said from the cargo section. Not tracked, guessed. Rashid's hands moved across the controls. Only 3 possible routes out of that asteroid belt for a shuttle this size. They split their forces to cover all of them. We got unlucky. Sura unfolded carefully in the cramped space. Leave me at the next debris field. Take a different route. They want me, not you. Not happening, Daniel said. This shuttle cannot outrun military interceptors. Sura's voice carried calm acceptance. Your deaths gain nothing. My death at least has purpose. Rashid looked back at them. Anyone have a third option? Because I'm not interested in dying or surrendering, and this shuttle's weapons are designed for mining asteroids, not fighting warships. Daniel stared at the sensor display. The Vorlath ships were spreading into pursuit formation, cutting off escape vectors. In 15 minutes, they would be in weapons range. In 20, it would all be over. His mind raced through possibilities, each one ending in capture or death. Then he remembered something Amira had said. Make things disappear into system noise. How much refinery waste did we load? Daniel asked. Rashid checked the manifest. 4 containers, why? The Vorleth scanned for life signs, right? Biological signatures. That's how they track Dravari refugees, yes. Daniel moved to the cargo containers. Sura, you said your people process toxins. Does that mean you're saturated with them? Do the poisons become part of your biology? The dragon's eyes brightened. Yes, our cells metabolize toxic compounds. We are, in essence, living chemical processors. So if you consumed a massive amount of refinery waste right now, would your biological signature become more toxic? Sura understood immediately. It would intensify. The Vorlath scanners would register me as a hazardous chemical spill, not a life form. Then drink, Daniel said, opening the first container. Drink everything we have. Rashid caught on. If they're scanning for a Dravari life sign and all they find is toxic sludge, they might pass us by. It's a long shot. It's the only shot we have. Sura consumed all 4 containers in less than 10 minutes. The dragon's scales began to glow with dangerous intensity, colors shifting from blue to green to something that hurt to look at directly. The translator sparked and went silent. Sura's body shook with the strain of processing so much toxic material at once. Is this safe? Rashid asked. No, Daniel said, watching Sura with growing concern. But it's better than the alternative. The Vorleth interceptors closed to weapons range. The shuttle's panel lit up with targeting locks. Any second now they would fire. Daniel held his breath. The targeting locks faded. One of the interceptors peeled off, moving toward a different search grid. Then the second. The third made one more pass, its scanners sweeping over the shuttle before it also turned away. They were leaving. Rashid stared at his instruments in disbelief. They're gone. They actually left. Daniel knelt beside Sura. The dragon lay on the deck, scales flickering like a broken light. Are you all right? Sura did not answer, could not answer with the translator damaged, but one eye opened, and Daniel saw understanding there, saw gratitude and pain in equal measure. Get us somewhere safe, Daniel told Rashid. She needs time to process all that poison. Safe is relative out here, Rashid said, but he adjusted their course. There's an abandoned mining station 3 days from here. No life support, no resources, but it's off the standard routes. We can hide there while your friend recovers. The 3 days passed slowly. Sura remained unconscious, body working to metabolize the massive dose of toxins. Daniel stayed beside the dragon, monitoring the vital signs he could understand and worrying about the ones he could not. Rashid kept the shuttle running and watched the sensors for any sign of pursuit. On the evening of the third day, they reached the abandoned station. It drifted in the dark, a relic from an old mining operation that had run dry decades ago. Rashid docked the shuttle in one of the empty bays and ran a full system check. Life support is dead, he reported, but the structure is sound. We can set up temporary habitation in the central hub. They carried Sura into the station, laying the dragon in what had once been a command center. Daniel rigged emergency lights and heating units while Rashid worked on repairing the translator. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of equipment and Sura's labored breathing. On the fourth day, Sura woke. Water, the dragon whispered, translator crackling back to life. Daniel brought water mixed with a small amount of processing waste. Sura drank slowly, carefully. The dangerous glow had faded from the scales, leaving only the normal starlight shimmer. You saved me again, Sura said. You saved yourself. That was your plan. My plan would have killed me if I attempted it alone. The quantity I consumed would overwhelm any Dravari, but you stayed with me, monitored my condition. Your presence kept me stable. Rashid appeared in the doorway. Hate to interrupt the mutual appreciation, but we have a problem. I've been monitoring communications from nearby systems. The Vorlath aren't giving up. They've declared the entire sector a search zone. Every station, every ship, every habitable rock is being inspected. They want me that badly? Sura asked. They want what you represent. Daniel had been thinking about this for days. If word gets out that a human helped a Dravari escape, it undermines their narrative. It shows their genocide isn't universally accepted. It makes them look weak. So they will hunt us forever. Unless we change the story, Rashid said. He pulled out a communication relay. I've been talking to Amira. She's still on Station 7, still has access to the station's broadcast systems. She can send a message to every human vessel and station in this sector, maybe beyond. What kind of message? Daniel asked. Rashid looked at Sura. The truth, what the Vorleth are doing to the Dravari, what they did to you, what happens when people choose profit over principles. He turned to Daniel. And what happens when one human chooses differently, when someone risks everything for a stranger who asked only for scraps? That will make me a target, Daniel said. You're already a target. This just makes sure your choice means something. Sura struggled to sit up. Broadcasting such a message will anger the Vorlath. They may retaliate against human stations, against innocents. Maybe, Rashid agreed. Or maybe it will inspire other humans to help, to stand up, to refuse complicity. He looked between them. But it's not my decision, it's yours. Daniel thought about his daughter, safe on a colony world, growing up in a galaxy where genocide was acceptable as long as it was profitable. He thought about Amira's brother, who died trying to make people care. He thought about all the other Dravari refugees hiding in the dark, asking only for scraps because they had forgotten they deserved more. Send the message, Daniel said. Sura's scales brightened. Then we go forward together, into whatever comes. Into whatever comes, Daniel agreed. Amira's message went out on every open channel humans used across the sector. She included everything: recordings of Daniel helping Sura, testimony about the Vorlath genocide, documentation of corporate complicity. Most importantly, she included images of Sura herself, alive and recovering, proof that helping was possible. The response came faster than anyone expected. Within hours, human vessels across the sector began broadcasting support. Trade ships diverted from profitable routes to search for Dravari refugees. Independent stations opened their docks to anyone fleeing Vorlath persecution. Even corporate vessels, facing pressure from their own crews, began quietly refusing to cooperate with Vorlath inspections. The Vorlath Empire responded with threats. They declared economic sanctions against any human entity that harbored refugees. They sent warships to enforce compliance. They promised severe consequences for continued interference in what they called internal security matters. Humans kept helping anyway. Daniel watched the news feeds from the abandoned station, amazed. I don't understand. Most of these people never met a Dravari. They gain nothing from this. They gain something, Sura said, strength returning to her voice. They gain the knowledge that they acted with honor, that they chose correctly when tested. For some, this is worth more than profit. Rashid was monitoring military channels. The Vorlath are mobilizing a fleet, not just hunters, capital ships. They're preparing for something big. War, Daniel said quietly. They're going to make an example. A new transmission cut across all channels. The voice was human, military, carrying absolute authority. This is Admiral Patricia Hayes of the Human Defense Fleet. To all vessels in Sector 7. The Vorlath Empire has issued an ultimatum demanding we cease refugee assistance and surrender all Dravari individuals currently under human protection. They have given us 48 hours to comply. Daniel felt his stomach drop. This was his fault. One choice had led to this, to the edge of war. The Admiral continued. The Vorlath seem to believe we make decisions based on fear and profit calculations. They are mistaken. Therefore, I am authorizing the following response. All human military vessels are to proceed immediately to establish protective cordons around stations and ships harboring refugees. Any attempt to seize individuals under human protection will be met with defensive force. Furthermore, I am declaring Sector 7 a humanitarian zone. All refugees of any species are welcome. All persecutors are not. Rashid laughed in disbelief. She just told the Vorlath Empire to go to hell. She just started a war, Daniel said. She just made a statement, Sura corrected. That some things matter more than peace. That protection of the helpless is worth the risk. More transmissions flooded in. Other human admirals echoing Hayes's position. Civilian captains pledging their ships to refugee transport. Scientists offering to study Dravari biology to provide better medical care. It was chaos, beautiful and terrifying. Then a new signal appeared on their sensors. A ship was approaching the abandoned station, moving fast. Not Vorlath design. Human military frigate, broadcasting friendly identification codes. They found us, Rashid said. Let them dock, Sura said. We cannot hide forever. If humans are willing to fight for us, the least I can do is trust them. The frigate captain came aboard with a small escort. Her name was Lynn, and she moved with the efficient grace of someone who had spent decades in military service. She studied Sura with open curiosity but no fear. "You're the one who started all this," Lynn said. "I asked for scraps," Sura replied. "Daniel Reed gave me life instead. And now half the sector is following his example." Lynn turned to Daniel. "The Admiral wants to meet you, both of you. There's going to be a conference at Unity Station. Humans, Dravari survivors, representatives from other species. The Vorlath are coming too under diplomatic protocols. We're going to settle this one way or another." "A conference won't stop genocide," Daniel said. "No, but it will make the genocide visible. Right now, the Vorlath can pretend their actions are justified security measures. They can claim the Dravari are dangerous. But if we put survivors like Sura in front of the galactic community, show what's really happening, they lose that narrative." "They still have the military power," Rashid pointed out. "They do, but power without legitimacy is just violence, and violence makes enemies." Lynn gestured to the airlock. "The galaxy has been ignoring the Dravari genocide because it was convenient. You made it inconvenient. Now we force everyone to choose sides." The journey to Unity Station took 5 days. Daniel spent most of it helping Sura prepare for what was coming. The dragon was nervous in ways he had not seen before. Physical danger Sura could face with calm acceptance. But speaking in front of thousands, representing an entire dying species, that terrified the dragon. "What if I say the wrong thing?" Sura asked. "What if I fail them?" "You won't," Daniel said. "Tell them what you told me. Tell them you asked for scraps because you forgot you deserved more. Tell them what the Vorlath did. Tell them the truth. That's all anyone can ask." Unity Station appeared in the viewport, a massive structure where dozens of species met for trade and diplomacy. Ships surrounded it like a swarm, news vessels and military escorts and civilian transports, all drawn to the coming conference. The fate of an entire species would be decided in those halls. As they docked, Daniel saw the Vorlath delegation arriving. Their ships were massive, designed to intimidate. Soldiers in dark armor formed precise ranks. Everything about them projected power and control. Then he looked at the human ships. Smaller, varied, chaotic. Crews that did not march in perfect formation but moved with individual purpose. Some were military, some civilian, some barely armed at all. They looked disorganized compared to the Vorlath precision. But there were so many of them. Daniel Reed, Admiral Hayes, met them at the airlock. She was older than her voice suggested, gray hair pulled back, eyes that had seen too much war. "You have no idea what you've started. I was just trying to help one person." "That's how all the best rebellions begin." Hayes looked at Sura. "I'm told you eat refinery waste." "My species processes toxins, yes." "We have a proposal. Humans have thousands of mining operations producing millions of tons of toxic waste. Waste we have to contain at enormous expense. If the Dravari can process it, that's not just saving your species. It's solving one of our biggest environmental problems." Sura's scales flickered. "You offer us purpose." "We offer partnership. Real partnership, not the exploitation the Vorlath promised." Hayes smiled grimly. "Plus, it gives the Vorlath a practical reason to back down. They wanted you dead because you were useless refugees. But if you're valuable partners to humanity, killing you becomes politically expensive." "You reduce our survival to economics," Sura said. "I reduce their justification to economics. Your survival should never have required justification." Hayes checked her datapad. "The conference starts in 2 hours. Rest, prepare. When you speak, remember you're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for every Dravari who died asking for mercy they never received." Sura looked at Daniel. "I am afraid." "Good," he said. "Fear means it matters. Now let's go show them why." The conference chamber held representatives from 40 species. Daniel stood at the back with Rashid, watching as delegates filed in. The Vorlath contingent sat together, their dark armor making them look like a solid wall of force. Across from them, a small group of humans in mismatched uniforms, and scattered throughout, individuals from species Daniel did not recognize, all watching to see what would happen. Sura sat at the center table, alone, the only Dravari present, the only survivor willing to speak publicly. The mediator, a tall being with too many arms and a voice like wind chimes, called the session to order. We gather to address accusations of genocide against the Dravari species by the Vorlath Empire. The Empire claims necessary security actions. The humans claim systematic extermination. We will hear testimony. A Vorlath commander stood. His name was Talric, and he spoke with the certainty of someone who had never been questioned. The Dravari possessed dangerous processing capabilities. They refused regulation. They hoarded strategic resources. We offered civilization. They chose hostility. Our response was proportional and necessary. You offered slavery, Sura said quietly. We offered purpose under proper oversight. Your species lacked the sophistication for self-governance. We lacked the willingness to be owned. Sura's voice carried through the chamber. You came to our world's promising partnership. You built facilities. You brought your poisons. We processed them because we believed in cooperation. Then you demanded we surrender our autonomy. When we refused, you declared us enemies and brought your warships. Talric's expression did not change. You were security threats. We were inconvenient. We could say no. That made us dangerous to your vision of order. A delegate from a species called the Methodron spoke. Why should we believe one refugee over an established empire? Admiral Hayes stood. Because we have evidence, recordings from destroyed Dravari worlds, testimony from survivors, documentation of systematic eradication. The Vorlath are not conducting security operations. They are erasing an entire species. And humans suddenly care about genocide, Talric asked. Your species has committed countless atrocities throughout your own history. Yes, Hayes said simply. We have. We know what genocide looks like because we have done it. We know the justifications because we have used them. We know the calculations of power and profit because we have made them. That's exactly why we recognize what you are doing and why we refuse to ignore it. The chamber erupted in crosstalk. Delegates argued about evidence, about jurisdiction, about the economic cost of intervention. Daniel watched it all and felt despair growing. They were turning survival into debate points, reducing extinction to parliamentary procedure. Then Sura stood. The dragon's scales caught the light, throwing colors across the chamber walls. For a moment, everyone fell silent. I asked for scraps, Sura said. When Daniel Reed found me dying in wreckage, I asked only for garbage, for waste, for the minimum to die with small dignity. I did not ask for rescue because I had forgotten I deserved to be rescued. The Vorlath taught me this. They taught my entire species that we were worth only what we could process for them. When we remembered our worth, they decided we were worth nothing at all. Sura moved slowly around the table, addressing each delegate directly. You sit here debating jurisdiction and evidence. You calculate economic impacts and political risks. I understand. These are the tools of civilization. But while you debate, my people die. While you calculate, children hide in toxic waste fields because those are the only places Vorlath sensors cannot reach. While you consider, a species forgets it deserves to exist. What would you have us do? The Methodron delegate asked. Start a war. I would have you care, Sura said. Not as strategy, not as calculation, just as conscious beings who see suffering and choose to end it. Daniel Reed cared. He risked everything for one dying refugee. Amira cared. She lost her career to send a message. Humans across this sector cared. They changed their routes, opened their stations, faced economic sanctions, all for a species most had never met. Talric stood. Humans act on emotion. This is not governance. No, Admiral Hayes said. This is principle, something you would not recognize. You speak of principle, while harboring refugees, we have legal claim too. We speak of principle while protecting people you have no right to murder. Hayes moved to stand beside Sura. The Vorleth Empire wants us to surrender the Dravari we have sheltered. They want us to pretend we do not see what is happening. They want complicity dressed as neutrality. We refuse. Then you choose conflict, Talric said. No, you chose genocide. We choose to stand in your way. The chamber exploded into arguments. Some delegates supported Hayes. Others warned of economic disaster and military conflict. A few quietly mentioned their own refugee populations, their own fears of Vorlath attention. Daniel watched the chaos and wondered if anything would change. Then slowly, delegates began to stand. First, a representative from the Karathi collective. We will open our stations to refugees. Then a Belosian trade captain. Our vessels will assist in transport operations. More voices, more species, each one adding their commitment. Not all of them, not even most, but enough to matter. Talric watched his control of the room collapse. You make a mistake. The Empire will not tolerate interference. The Empire will learn to, Hayes said, because we are done being complicit. The conference ended without formal resolution. The Vorlath delegation left threatening retaliation, but the commitment stood. Species across the sector began opening sanctuaries, organizing refugee operations, forcing the Vorlath to choose between attacking everyone or accepting their authority had limits. 6 months later, Daniel stood on a newly constructed station orbiting a former mining colony. The station was designed by humans and Dravari together, built to process the toxic waste from nearby industrial operations. Dravari refugees worked alongside human engineers, turning poison into profit and death into partnership. Sura approached him at the observation window. The dragon's scales had fully healed, the silver scars barely visible. I have been thinking, Sura said, about scraps and life and the difference between them. And I asked for scraps because I believed that was all I deserved. You gave me life because you believed I deserved more. But the truth is more complicated. The scraps were life. The waste I consumed sustained me. It was never worthless. I just needed someone to show me that nothing is worthless if it keeps you alive. Daniel watched through the window as another refugee ship docked. Dravari survivors, no longer hiding, no longer asking only for scraps. You saved more than yourself with that testimony. We saved each other. That is what I learned. Survival is not individual. We live because others choose to help us live. We matter because others choose to believe we matter. Below them, the station hummed with activity. Humans and Dravari working together, building something neither could have built alone. It was not perfect. There were still Vorlath attacks, still political opposition, still species that refused to help. But it was better than what came before. Your daughter sends messages, Sura said. I have seen them in your files. Daniel nodded. She wants to meet you, wants to understand why I did what I did. Will you tell her? I will tell her I found someone asking for scraps and realized I had been asking for the same thing my whole life. I will tell her that giving life costs nothing but means everything. Daniel smiled. And I will tell her that sometimes the galaxy changes because one person chooses compassion over calculation. A new ship appeared in the viewport. More refugees, more survivors, more lives saved. The communication system crackled with dozens of languages, dozens of species, all seeking sanctuary. The station opened its docks to receive them all. Sura's translator hummed with something that might have been satisfaction. Your species is strange, Daniel Reed. You see suffering and your first response is to help. This makes you unpredictable, dangerous to those who profit from suffering. Is that a compliment? It is an observation, and perhaps a warning. What you started here will spread. Other species will learn from your example. The galaxy will change because you refused to look away when someone asked for scraps. Daniel thought about that. About one choice made in a salvage bay, about one dragon asking for nothing, about one human deciding that nothing was not enough. Small choices that became movements that became change. Good, he said, let it change. Outside, the stars burned steady in the dark, and the station kept its doors open to anyone who needed them.